Today, officers impressed upon the court the potential danger to her by an obsessed sex offender considered a high risk to reoffend. This time, the protection order was granted, requiring Stepan stay away from Westervelt and her family. Sarah Weens has been stockpiling breast milk since her 4-month-old son was born. But after discovering he's lactose intolerant, she has a 6-month supply and she wants to milk it for all it's worth online. But milk banks aren't an option in Winnipeg. The closest and only one in Canada is in Vancouver. So for milk-challenged mothers here, it's either infant formula or striking up a private deal. If everyone was traveling faster, there would be no need to pass slower-moving vehicles. The city's traffic analysts think this speed change will actually make things safer, improving traffic flow and reducing collisions. From the day Sheba was born, 3-year-old Sunny, the golden lab, has stepped in, licking, snuggling, and most incredibly, feeding.
Sheba started to suckle her and she started developing milk and she still has milk. And yeah, it's amazing, I know.
Mothering Sheba has become a full-time job for this friendly dog. Everywhere that Sunny is, this lamb is sure to go. Although, now that she's a little older, Sheba just can't figure out why she's not allowed in the house.
2 pieces of cheese, pieces of bacon,
and 2 pieces of chicken.
So long, bun.
Is it a sandwich or is it a challenge? Either way, the new Double Down has created a major buzz and major lineups at KFCs across the city. Smitten by ads for the first ever bunless burger, Daryl and Adam brought a designated driver for their extra meaty mission today. But when it comes to overdoing it, this isn't the only bad boy. Wendy's Baconator has a rap sheet that's just as unhealthy. But will Daryl try the KFC meat monster again?
Oh no, I'm not suicidal. No.
So how did researchers know that balance was related to emotional and behavioral health? The answer isn't quite as scientific as you may think. So keeping my speed at 40 kilometers an hour and using a stopwatch, I'm going to see how long it takes me to get through 8 city blocks. First, the roundabouts of Grosvenor, then the stop signs of Kingsway. Meanwhile, a busy night in the North End for Winnipeg police. In a matter of 6 blocks, a standoff, a police search, and an arrest of several teens. Global's Night Watch reporter Heather Steele spent the night following the activity and joins us now. Heather. We're still a few days away from the big game in Edmonton, but a story about a Grey Cup ring is generating reaction from players. A former Winnipeg Blue Bomber had his prized '84 ring ripped right off his hand by muggers in this city. As Crystal Gumansing reports, the victim's son may have a way to take some of that sting out of the theft. Hundreds of Winnipeg cabs could be pulled off the streets in just a few days. A November 29th deadline to have safety shields installed is coming up. As Global's Nellie Gonzalez reports, the airport is making plans to get travelers into town without cabs. Craig joins us now with a full look at our SkyTrack weather, and we're still getting dumped on.
One more day. Yeah. One more day of the bad stuff, except it's going to get a tad windier.
Is it going to melt, though, Mr. Larkins? That's what we want to know.
No, it's here to stay. We're in it for the long run.
It's the start of a journey that proves cats aren't the only ones with 9 lives. 7 Manitoba dogs boarded a private jet for their own new beginning.
I promise this is your last trip.
They're called the Lucky 7, but when they arrived at the Winnipeg Humane Society 2 months ago, they were anything but. Annie, Hammond, Missy, Oliver, Rose, Spirit, and Viv were part of a horrifying discovery in Gull Lake. Living here, severely neglected among 61 dogs in cramped, dark quarters, covered in feces and mud. Over half of the dogs needed to be euthanized, but with intense rehabilitation, the rest would get a second chance.
They were saying they don't know which is worse, to watch somebody fade away or have it sudden, but our family has both.
Standing in his parents' farmhouse, Cliff Shaver is surrounded by pieces of them. His mother's delicate artwork, his father's stained glass lamps, their beloved lapdog Peppy, a home with all the warm reminders of a happy, long life together.
They loved each other. They were kind of a little bit opposite. I guess opposites attract, and that's what kept them together for 60 years.
As Irene's health faded in the later years of life, George became her caregiver, cooking and cleaning. The 83-year-old was out to pick up his wife's medication Thursday afternoon when the unthinkable happened. Traveling in a storm back to their Austinfeld farm, his Dodge Stratus collided head-on with a 19-year-old woman driving a Chevy Cavalier northbound on Highway 302. George was killed instantly. The news too much for Irene, who was immediately taken to hospital.
She kept asking, is Dad really gone? And then she struggled for a bit. He passed away.
6 hours after the death of his father, Cliff is convinced his mother passed away of a broken heart.
That's what I think, the shock. The shock was too much for her. She had planned that she was going first.
Now Cliff, along with his 3 other siblings and dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, will plan George and Irene's goodbye.
I'm going to make arrangements for my mom to be cremated and then put in the coffin with my dad and then buried together. They'll still be together.
Married for 60 years, and even at death, they didn't part. Lindsay, WARNER, Global News. Gord admits his hopes were high to walk. That didn't happen. But for the first time in years, he can feel his legs and has the energy to move behind a walker.
That's a huge improvement in my situation. It's just enormous.
It's just thrilling that, you know, in a year something can change so drastically in your life. It was worth every penny.
And rather than waking up wondering what's not working with his body, Gord Park says it's now liberating to wake up to what is. Lindsay, WARNER, Global News. You can't walk anywhere in the rec center today without stepping on shards of glass. From the bottom floor lounge, chairs and tables were thrown through 6-foot panes of glass. Upstairs, these windows just installed Friday, now in pieces on the rink below, along with bottles of booze and club trophies.
A lot of work goes into maintaining it, and it's just a senseless act.
It's going to be at least 2 weeks before the ice can be repaired, especially on this rink where vandals took a hose and melted the ice. But the wrecking spree doesn't end there. Vending machines and beverage coolers are in pieces, along with the club's trophy case and TVs. Through the rear view of his tractor, he's a man beaming with pride.
I never thought I would ever be able to contribute in this manner.
And while Doug Barker's tractor work doesn't look like anything special, this is the first time, arguably in history, that a 1,500-pound hay bale has been lifted by a quadriplegic.
You always feel like you're less of a man because you can't help out. So I just said, you know, I got to somehow figure out a way to help out.
Frustrated with watching from the sidelines, Doug began to work on a plan to find independence. And after a year and a half, what he created was the first fully accessible tractor. Barker's Tractor of Independence has a wheelchair lift and easy-to-use gears and steering for the little bit of movement he has in his wrist and arms.
We adapted these joysticks with tripods so I can put my hand in.
They held a media event to talk about it and took this shot at rival candidate Judy Wasalisha-Lease.
There are some out there that take a bit of a Mary Poppins approach to crime. And the difficulty, however, is that even Mary Poppins had some medicine to go with the sugar.
For a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Is it appropriate to compare a female political opponent to a singing cinema nanny? Kate's wouldn't quite say.
I happen to love that movie, okay? And I don't believe in hugging a thug, I'll tell you that right now. I know my opponent does, that's not me.
And she joins us now live from John Orliko's campaign headquarters at Stafford and Grosvenor. So Lindsay, how are people feeling about the results that are coming in so far?
Well, the entire crowd is declaring a victory. There's even a cake right here with an O, which I understand John Orliko here is a big fan of the O logo.
I am.
But you yourself, you're not claiming victory yet. Why is that?
Well, you know, there's been too many campaigns that you've read about or seen about, and until the official results come in, that's when I know it's done deal. But it's looking very promising right now.
You're ahead about 2,000 votes.
It'd be a miracle, but yeah, until it's official. But like tonight, we're going to celebrate. We have everything to celebrate regardless of how the campaign went. We had an incredible team, hundreds of volunteers. So tonight's a celebration no matter what. but the extra 2,000 votes does make us feeling very confident that we've won.
Now, this has been a race that's been very closely watched because of the alleged dirty politics. Was there ever a time that you were worried or had any sort of doubt about your campaign?
Not about my campaign. I was worried about how some of the language and how some of the wedge issue stuff that was being exploited would actually resonate with the community. Would this actually prevent people from coming out and voting, which is always my most serious concern. We want people to be engaged in the process, but again, all we had is our campaign strategy, and we had our benchmarks, and we just focused on that.
And John, what would you say you learned from this?
I learned from this that we have our community definitely wants to have a voice at the table. I knew that going in, but again, I know that our community has the understanding and they want to have that community voice, and they will have it.
Okay. Thanks, John. That's John Orlico, not declaring victory yet, but still leading by 2,000 votes. Peter.